Everybody, welcome to the Yellowstone Art Museum for our virtual First Friday. Today we have Kristi Hager in the building with us, and she's going to talk about her exhibition, Equal, a Work in Progress. Kristi is a Missoula-based artist who has long roots in our state and in the cultural fabric of our state. And this project is one that she's been working on for a few years. She has 20 portraits of women, and I'm going to let her tell you about the rest.
Well, thank you for coming on this virtual tour of my show. I really was first inspired to get moving in this direction after the Women's March on Washington in 2017, and I thought about what I wanted to dedicate my creative energies to. Just try to get narrowed down a bit. And so I wanted to do some portraits of some women friends of mine, and I was actually inspired by the painter George Catman, which may sound really odd, but he's a painter who came up the Missouri in 1832 and 33 and painted Native American people, and he did 300 easily, more than 300 portraits. And all of the portraits are larger than life, and almost all of them, the subject is looking straight at the painter, which is not as common. Portraiture, you're often like George Washington. You're looking off to the side, a three-quarter view. But this is like just looking straight at the viewer. I found it very powerful, and the humanity of those people, those individuals, just was really palpable to me in those portraits. And I started painting portraits that exact size in oil of my friends, and it just was tedious and not coming to life, and they weren't big enough. And so I thought, how can I manage this and do a lot of them? I thought, he did over 300, it's just like stunning. And I thought, well, let's just get started, and I determined to do them at this size. And I had done other paintings on gauze before, so I knew the effect and how the transparency allowed for a certain sense of how temporary we are on this planet. So I just began, and this was the first one I did, and this is my friend Teresa Jordan. And she is a writer and an artist, and I was just trying to paint my friends and women I knew who had gone through some struggle to get where they were in their careers and their ambitions, to realize their ambitions in life. And so this was the first one. And I then was thinking of other friends, and at some point I thought, well, I guess I need to be strategic and maybe get a list. My plan to paint a lot of women's portraits with the ambition of maybe 100, not knowing how long it would take or where to begin, I thought I should memorialize some of my family members. And this is my great-grandmother, and Grossmutter Metz, she was known as. And I found her photograph in a family album, and it's probably from around the turn of the century. Anyways, the perfect photograph to work from because she's looking straight at the camera, which is where, and not smiling. That was the other thing. I didn't want broad smiles, which we're mostly trained to do now when we have our picture taken. But back then, exposures were long, and people didn't make a smile. It wasn't a spontaneous moment that was being captured. And you get a little bit of that 1,000-mile stare because they're holding their pose. But I found it a very moving portrait of her, and I never knew her, but I felt like as I worked on the portrait, I saw all kinds of family resemblances sort of appearing before my eyes. And then I continued to find, I did my mother, and I wanted to do a portrait of her when she was younger than I am, so that there wasn't necessarily an age coherence. I did self-portrait fairly early on, and then it was sort of who was around and who I could rope into sitting for me. I'd like to introduce you to my mother. This was probably from a photograph taken around 1950, and it was always one of my favorite photographs of her. And then my sister-in-law from Wyoming made a trip to see the show here in Billings. And then as you can see, there's a lot of women who are my friends. And I realized I wanted to include a younger generation of women, and my goddaughter is out there by the front, on the front window at the museum. And when I was thinking, at this point, I was really thinking about the Equal Rights Amendment and how it didn't pass. And I thought it for sure would pass in my lifetime. And of course, it still hasn't. So I realized that this is a work in progress, as is this whole group of portraits. I don't have an end number in my mind. I want to keep painting them. But I did find friends with a young daughter who volunteered or got volunteered to be part of the project. And you might notice that all of these portraits are just identified with the women's initials. And that really happened because at some point I wanted to paint the portrait of Ruth Bader Ginsburg, and I knew I'd be identifying her as RBG. And she is the only famous person in this exhibit, and I was not really looking to paint celebrities or famous people, but I realized that after the Equal Rights Amendment didn't pass, that she, before she became a Supreme Court justice, she had a very strategic plan to bring cases before the Supreme Court that helped to gain more and more equal rights for women incrementally. And so I find her an inspiration because I realize that we all are called to help reach equality, which is just the kind of equality that humans want, and it's even more poignant right now at this time that economic, social, and political equality is just what all humans want. And it just happened that I got this group of paintings together in time for the 100th anniversary of women's suffrage. Thank you.